With jury selection set to start, Brian Walshe walked into a courtroom today in Dedham, Massachusetts for a final hearing ahead of his murder trial. His own mother blows him a kiss. Meanwhile, his defense team is fighting to keep jurors from hearing that Anna Walshe was a loving mother, and that prosecutors are pushing to show every brutal Google search about murder and dismemberment. The defense says, get out of here. We have covered this case from the beginning. It's been a while. Tonight, we are back at it.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor. Here's your host, Emmy award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor. This is the show, the global phenomenon that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. And tonight, we are back with a case that we began covering when Anna Walshe went missing. The disappearance and presumed murder of the 39-year-old mother of three has just picked up steam since then. It is a case that began with a missing persons report and unraveled into some real bloody evidence, some disturbing Google searches that we will get to tonight, and a husband in Brian accused of murder and dismemberment. If you're new to the story, here's a quick crash course. Anna vanished on New Year's Day, 2023. So obviously we're talking 2+ years on, or almost 2+ years here. Is it more than 2+ years? I'm bad with math. Brian Walshe, her husband, told police she left for a work trip. She was working for a high-end real estate agency out of Washington, D.C. However, investigators say she never, ever boarded a plane that he claimed she did. Never used her phone or credit cards ever again. Blood later found in their basement, along with a damaged, bloody knife. And again, those internet searches on murder, body disposal, and whether you can be charged without a body. Fast forward to today, on the eve of jury selection, Brian Walsh's team is battling over evidence, character testimony, and whether jurors should even hear that Anna was a devoted mother. That's kind of crazy to me, but we'll ask the lawyers. His own mother blowing him a kiss in court yet again. That was a moment caught by cameras and being debated around dinner tables tonight, I guess. So without further ado, let me bring in some of the best guests. You know this face from when we covered Karen Reed, Peter Ellicott. He is a formidable criminal defense attorney out of the Boston area. You've seen him on Court TV. You've seen him on NBC Boston. You've seen him on the TV, particularly talking about Karen Reed. And now you've got Brian and Anna Walshe. John Fishwick, a first-time best guest. He's a former U.S. attorney for the Western District of Virginia, appointed by President Barack Obama, praised by Attorney General Loretta Lynch for his work on gun violence, the heroin epidemic, community trust, all of that. Now he is a formidable criminal defense attorney out of the great state of Virginia. And last but certainly not least, Nico LaHood, a fan favorite, an STS singles favorite. This guy is married, so hands off. He's the former district attorney in Bexar County, which I used to pronounce Bexar until we had Nico on the show, but it is spelled B-E-X-A-R, pronounced Bear, and we're going to dive right into this. You've got a great legal panel to discuss Brian Walshe. Peter, the obvious first question here, you always hear people say, well, it's, so difficult for prosecutors to prosecute a no-body case. Sadly, 39-year-old Anna Walshe, her body was never found. How does it complicate the matter?
Well, it's true. To the untrained eye, you'd say, well, gee, no body and there's no eyewitness, so how can they prove the case? A lot of people don't realize that a very strong circumstantial case can be among the very strongest of all cases you can have. And that's what the prosecution is acting on. I mean, piece by piece. And I'll just kind of very succinctly, briefly go through this stuff. His wife is suddenly, they're with some people, with another guy on New Year's Eve. Suddenly, that's the last anybody saw. He says she leaves early in the morning. New Year's Day, gets picked up by a ride-sharing service, taken to Logan Airport in Boston to go off to her job in Washington. There's no evidence that any car ever picked her up. There's no evidence that she ever got on the plane. And then almost within hours, he is alleged, Googling about how to dismember a body and dispose of it. How long does it take for a body to smell? And then he's seen, very within a couple of days, he's out there buying hacksaw, hatchet, what's that, Tyvek suit, and cleaning materials and mops, etc. And then they see him on video, alleged going to 5 different dumpsters in various towns through eastern Massachusetts, who seem to struggle to have these heavy, garbage bags that he's bringing into these various dumpsters in various towns. And they say that some of her belongings were actually part of that recovered from it. So anyway, the bottom line is that's sort of the building blocks. They're saying, yeah, we don't have a body, but why would she suddenly out of the blue disappear, never use a credit card, and all these, no sign of her ever leaving the house in a car or an airplane or anything like that. And so it is a very strong circumstantial case, although in fairness, we have not heard really what the defense is for the defendant. And again, they are going to, certainly they can say, look, how do you even know she's dead? You can't even prove that. And there's nobody even saw anything. So how can you say he killed her when, there's not evidence there? So that's sort of the armies are lining up on the sides. And that's sort of, I think, what's going to make this such a fascinating case. Yeah,
I agree with you. John, welcome. First time here at SCS. Hope it's the first of many here. But Peter just alluded to some of this. They found blood evidence in the Walshe home, that damaged bloody knife, surveillance footage, trash transfer, Brian's Google searches, which there are a lot of, cell phone and travel data, and lack of any financial or digital sort of whereabouts. And this picture is tough to look at because they had 3 very young children at the time, and they're still very young because it was less than 3 years ago. John, Matt in the chat, who's here often now, and shout out to Matt, said this jury will be out for 20 minutes. Now, I know criminal defense attorneys don't like to, on either side, you guys don't like to say, well, this is a slam dunk case. But is this going to be a fairly, in your opinion, easy case for the government? Or is the defense going to come out and say, look, she could be in Monaco right now with a wealthy paramour? I don't know. What's going to happen here?
Joel, thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I would say it's a very strong case for the prosecution. Jurors don't leave their common sense at the door. Remember, the police go to interview Brian, the husband, and he lies to them, basically. He misrepresents where he was after she went missing. And, if you lie to law enforcement, that puts you in a very bad place with every jury in this country. So that's a challenge for him. And he's charged with concealing body parts. It's not like that's a charge that comes up very often. And so they're going to have the video evidence of him taking these heavy bags to various spots around, and dumping them. In one of those bags, they've recovered some of her personal items in it. So, no husbands, even if they've got a tough marriage going on, is just, disposing of his wife's items and lying about her whereabouts. So that's going to put him in a very bad light, I think, with this jury. And then they've got all the other evidence. She's missing. He lied about where she was. They've got the bags. I think the case may be stronger without a body. I think when you've got a missing body, a jury says, well, maybe this defendant, destroyed her body, thinking, well, if we didn't have a body, he wouldn't get prosecuted. And so it's a very gruesome setting. So I think the defense has got a huge uphill battle.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. It might be tougher with a body. Nico, what about that? Before you answer that, and I know you've been in the trenches, Nico, and I'm sure you personally have prosecuted, as DA, no body cases. I'm bringing this up. I don't think this is very accurate, I have to say, and my mother is Serbian, for full disclosure. There is some talk that Anna was involved with the Serbian mob. I have no reason to believe that. I have no idea where this is coming from. However, Nico, the reason I bring this up is someone like Lily could potentially be a juror, which is where she's from, Serbia. Perhaps she's still alive. Who knows? Maybe the defense gets up there and says exactly this. She's Serbian. She was connected to the mob somehow, and she's alive and well in my mother's hometown of Subotica. What do you think, Nico?
Well, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the jury thinks. Yeah. So there's a doctrine called corpus delicti, right? to where you can't get convicted or prosecuted without some evidence. If somebody admits to pushing 10 kilos of coke, but there's no evidence of it, it's not enough by itself. There has to be some other evidence. So in a murder case, you think that you need a body. As the panel said, you don't need a body, but you do need circumstantial evidence to support that allegation this person has passed on. And that's why evidence of her being a loving mom is so relevant, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if they have the same rules as if the federal rules, 401, 402, and 403, which are relevancy rules. And then there's a balancing test in 403 to say, okay, what's probative, but is it more prejudicial? Because in a normal murder case, when you have a body, it doesn't matter that she was a loving mom. That's punishment evidence. That's not guilt innocence evidence. We have a bifurcated trial here in Texas. But in this case, when you have a missing body, you have to look at the financial records, the digital footprint. And she would never have left her kids. She had plans to raise her children. She's close with her mama. She would never leave her mom without any notice. So that's why it potentially becomes very relevant. Now, whether the judge allows it in under a 403 balancing analysis is another story. I don't know all the evidence. So it's sad all around. I see Marie here, San Diego, saying it's a sad case. It is a sad case. But I agree with the panel that on the surface, it looks like a strong case for the government, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a strong case once the evidence plays out.
Nico, welcome to my world. Here you go. Why are Nico's shelves bare? Just saying. He'll get on that.
I just moved into this office 6 weeks ago. I've been in trial for 4.5 weeks. So I'm looking at all the stuff that should be in these shelves since they just put them in when I was in trial. We had a 4.5 week murder trial and we got 3 acquittals. It was a not guilty for 3 officers. So I'll have it nice and shelved up for the next time.
There you go. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is some video here of thank you to Matt B. Matt B saying the jury's going to be out. He was 20 minutes. Well, I have a feeling you might be kind of close on that one. And this is partly why I'm going to play this video right now. Let's take a look together. This is just Brian Walshe walking in. Certain people have certain faces. Let's look at Brian Walshe's.
The motions that came in over the weekend.
They will address the court in a minute or less.
I love the courtroom.
Yeah, it's nice. Old school.
Yep.
All set? Thank you. For the record, the handcuffs have been removed from the defendant so that he can fully participate in today's hearing. So the purpose of today really is to go through the motions and eliminate, see where I can give you some rulings and some expected rulings. I always say expected rulings because I like to think of a trial as a living, breathing thing that evolves, not something that is pre-planned. So these are my best guesses. Sometimes I'm making actually affirmative rulings because I know enough that I don't think anything will change, but if it does change, I'll let you know.
I apologize. I thought the defense addressed the judge. That was obviously the judge. Peter, you're the local. We were talking, you and I. Larry Tipton is the I guess is chair 1, a criminal defense attorney. How good is he? Will he be able to make some sort of case here for Brian Walshe?
If anybody can, he can. I actually somehow never really got to know him, but everybody talks about him like he's the guru of us all. He has mentored more, superstar criminal defense lawyers. They say, oh yeah, Larry Tipton is the one who trained me. And so he's got an extraordinarily good reputation. And like I said, he's just extremely, extremely talented, been around for a long, long time. He doesn't look all that elderly, but he is just really, really good. So whatever happens with this case, I don't think anybody at the end of this trial will be able to be kicking himself, if only he had a better lawyer. He got convicted, but, his lawyer was a kind of a slouch and he couldn't get the best. No, nobody's going to complain that he simply has the best representation that you could possibly have here in Massachusetts.
And what about on the other side of the aisle, the Norfolk DA for this, Greg Connor, competent?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about him. I've actually never had a case with him either. But people say good things about. Yeah, he's an enormously competent lawyer, and that's I've not heard complaints about him about ethics or about him botching cases or anything like that. He is among the very best that particular county, Norfolk County, has to offer.
And lastly, I don't know if you've been in front of this judge, and I hope I don't want to butcher it. Diane Frenier, I believe. You familiar with her?
Yes, I am, and she also is a very, very fair, reasonable judge, and she will often explain exactly what she's doing and why she's doing it. And she's got a great temperament and disposition. And I've had some case. The last case I had in front of her was actually not a trial, but we were trying to work out something reasonable for somebody who had kind of some disabilities. And she was so caring, and she really wanted to know about it. And she really took the time and was encouraging, and actually was talking to him afterwards, trying to be encouraging to him about moving on with his life, etc. So I saw, and with her, it's not just talk. I mean, she really does care about it. She is not just skillful in jurisprudential things, but also I think that she has a real heart and is concerned and cares about what she's doing.
All right. Well, it's going to be. By the way, that courtroom looks like 20 times bigger than the Karen Reed courtroom. Is it? It looks a lot bigger.
Yeah, it's on the same floor, and there were reasons why they couldn't use it that time. But keep in mind that courthouse has been around for forever. And of course, the famous thing about it is it was that's the legendary courthouse where they fried Sacco and Vanzetti. I believe it was at the 1920s, and that was one of the great miscarriages of justice. I think they later got cleared decades later after they were executed, which was no help to them. It helped resurrect their reputations. But that's an old historic courthouse. There's a lot of wood in there. It's not all it's not all plasticky and high tech stuff. It's
does not look like the Florida courtroom as well.
Yeah, you want to keep that thing up. You need a lot of pledge. Yeah.
So Peter, he's not on bond, obviously, if he came in cuffs.
No, he's not. With that first degree murder, they were just he did not get no, he's never been released from the word go here.
Yeah. John, the reason I played that video in part is obviously to see him, but here are the comments. Very slappable face from our friend Ned Smith. Styled hair whilst in jail. Putts. And it goes on and on. Now, I mean, we're typically kind of a prosecutorial heavy, favored or favorite show. They favor the prosecution is what I'm trying to say. But you can't, you can coach your client to a degree, but he does have, some people just have a very genuine look. He happens to have one of these faces that is just incredibly smug. For a jury, is that, I know it sounds shallow, but is that a problem? Chin up in the air, again, the feathered-ish hair. There's not much you can do about it, but is that something the jurors are going to be reading?
They probably will. They'll be looking at him and taking glances at him, not staring at him, but getting glances at him. The biggest challenge he's got, though, is right after the opening statements, the prosecutors are going to say he destroyed his wife's body. He cut it up, mutilated it, put it in bags, and distributed it around the community and around Massachusetts. I mean, the jury is, if they start to believe that, they are not going to like him, period. And they're going to be very put off. Their arms are going to be folded. And they will make up their mind, I predict, very early in this case, because it is such a gruesome crime. And, when they look over to him, they say, look, he lied to law enforcement, right from the jump. And so that puts him in a very bad light. And so kind of how he looks becomes a little less relevant. It's the seriousness of this crime, the gruesomeness of it, and the fact that he lied. All of that hurts him probably much more than how he looks.
Yeah. By the way, jury selection is set to begin tomorrow. I heard they're only bringing in let me go to Nico on that. Nico, I hear they're only bringing in 70 jurors for a pool, which is very surprising to me. I don't know if that number is right, but this is
a fairly right. There's no way that's right.
Yeah, Peter, have you heard a different number? I heard 70, which is
no. I heard that too, and I was scratching my head about that. But I heard it from more than one source, so that seems to be the word going around.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's true, Nico. That seems like a very low number for a pretty high profile case.
Well, on this last trial we finished, we had 125,
Mhm.
and that was for for a murder case also. So 70. I mean, they're going to bust that. I don't know how they don't bust that panel unless the judge is not going to grant any strikes for cause.
Yeah, no, but I my sense was they were bringing in an initial 70. That wasn't it. Was
Yeah, I don't think that's the fine. Right. I don't think
70. Then we just turn around and give up on the trial this time around. And so I don't think that's it. But there was something, and I don't have it quite straight, but something about they were initially going to be bringing in 70 a day or something. And they will not walk away from this case once they run through the 70.
Peter, how long do you think it'll take to seat a jury in dead en masse for this case?
Oh my God, that I always hate being asked that because that's such a wild card. I just can't say. I would, I'd just be throwing it out there. I'd say a week and a half or something, but I could be wrong. It could be 3 weeks. It could be less than a week or whatever. But it's going to take a little while. One of the problems, of course, with this case is that it is so highly publicized, and I know the defense wanted to move the venue, but then again, I don't think there's anywhere in Massachusetts you can go without, having heard about this case. It's not like this is a local thing there in Norfolk County and outside there. Nobody's ever heard of it. I think that I don't know where they would go to get a different venue, and the judge did turn down that motion. Obviously, one of the things she said, there hasn't been a lot of really colorful, wild, lies and made up stories. She said almost everything that's come out about this case has just been factual, just sticking to the evidence. And she said, therefore, that's a reason why she thinks they can pick a fair jury.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because even at the height of the Karen retrial, I was up in Canton and people, I just asked random people in Canton and a bunch, probably 3/4 of who I asked did not know what was going on. So there's a lot of people that just are not in the know when it comes to that. One of the really interesting things today, John, the defense team, they pushed to block all testimony that would describe Anna as a quote unquote loving mother, dedicated employee, or caring wife. The defense claiming those labels would be emotionally. COE, can you play that? We have the sound bite. I apologize. I thought we might. COE, why don't you play that? And then we'll get John's take.
The concern I do have is the Commonwealth has indicated they expect to introduce evidence, quote unquote, that Anna Walshe was a loving mother who would never have abandoned her children and was a dedicated employee. So I'm sure the government is aware of the restrictions on how this evidence will come in, but that may or may not be relevant. And so I'd ask the court to revisit this before they seek to put this information in.
All right, Kamala.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the Commonwealth does plan to call witnesses who will testify as to their observations of the victim at her employment. Her employer will testify, as well as her former employer, who was the New Year's Eve guest, will testify as to her.
Is it Metlu or Mutlu, or how do you pronounce his last name?
Mutlu, Your Honor.
Mutlu?
Mutlu.
Okay, I'll try to remember that.
The Commonwealth will be introducing evidence to those persons regarding the victim's work ethic and
Observations or interactions with the children?
Yes, Your Honor, observations.
I'm going to hold it right there. I mean, John, again, the headline here is that they are trying to muzzle the government from referring to Anna as a loving mother, a dedicated employee, or a caring wife. And then there was a question that just passed me by, which is saying why, if that's who she was. Is this an odd request or is this a common request? I can't recall in a case that I've covered hearing that specifically asked from the defense.
Yeah, the defense is obviously worried about, incredible sympathy for her. She's this amazing mom and an amazing employee. What the prosecution wants to have that evidence on is that kind of person doesn't just disappear. They don't just abandon their children. They show up to work. They work hard. They're dedicated to their families and to their career. And so, the idea that they're just missing doesn't make any sense. They want folks to know that this person was murdered They didn't just miss work. They didn't just abandon their children. They did just walk off into the night. And so, the judge, I think today kind of indicated she's going to balance how that evidence comes in. She's probably not going to let the prosecution overdo it with, home videos of too much of that evidence. But I do think the judge, she's going to let folks testify about that. She was around in her children's lives. She showed up to work. I'm not going to let them overdo it because, the defense is just very concerned about that evidence. I mean, they're already going to be concerned about Brian Walshe with what he's alleged to have done. He's lied to cops. And then they've got this incredibly loving victim who people really like. That makes it really challenging for the defense. So they're trying to keep some of that evidence out. I think the judge is going to keep some of it out. Be mindful that this judge wants to make sure that the defendant gets a very fair trial, and that when and if there's an appeal, that the verdict stands. So I think the judge is going to be mindful of that and make sure that the defense gets some of the breaks on some of these evidentiary calls.
Yeah, I want to play this out now. Nico, I'll have you pick it up, but you see this comment from What Are You Saying? Why? How can they do that to not be able to call her a loving mom? It's part of her character and who she was. So, Nico, let's hear the rest of these arguments pertaining to this particular issue.
Interactions with the children.
All right. I'm not going to give you any firm rulings on it. You raised your objections at the time. I will tell you generally that I probably will allow observations of her, not to an excessive amount, whatever that in my mind becomes excessive, but general observations as to the victim's interactions with her children is permissible.
Your Honor, I would just add that the law is clear on this. They can't have specific acts, so an observation would be a witness giving their opinion or testimony on a specific act. And so that's not admissible. What they're allowed
You're right, opinion or testimony.
So observations, how are observations of her with her children relevant, which I suspect may or may not be relevant once we start. And it can't just be a limited number of people. So one person from her work saying that she had a good work ethic, the case law says you cannot do that. It has to be the general reputation of a community. And so I guess we will just raise the objections at the time. I just wanted to put the court on notice that any of this testimony could just be inflammatory and prejudicial and invoke sympathy of the jury to hear that she was a great mother and a great employee.
All right. I hear your objection, and I encourage you, and I know that you don't need any encouragement to make the real-time objection at the time of the trial. And I'm just trying to give you some basic guideposts of what my present thinking is with regard to that evidentiary issue. Anyone want anything more on that particular motion?
No, thank you. Not at this time, Your Honor.
Commonwealth's number.
That's that on that. But Nico, anytime a lawyer starts, the law is clear on this. I always believe the lawyer. That's how she started. The law is very clear on this. The judge obviously is going to go back and I'm sure look at case law. But what's going to happen here? I mean, is the government going to push this? And then, as we just heard the judge say, you're probably going to have to object in real time. Is that how it's going to play out?
I think John was on it. I mean, relevancy by definition is anything that has a tendency to prove or disprove a material fact in the case. And so the fact that she's a loving mom when you have a body is typically irrelevant. If it's not relevant under 402, then it's out. If it's coming in because it is relevant, it has to be balanced. And that's what we were all talking about, this rule of evidence. It has to balance out whether it's prejudicial over probative, whether it's cumulative, whether it distracts the issues to the jury. That's that balance that the judge is referencing. She's going to do a 403 balancing assessment at the time. And I think she's going to split the baby in the sense that she's going to let some opinion evidence in, because what that defense lawyer is talking about is specific instances of conduct are not going to come in. A lot of people argue over that. We're not going to talk about specific conduct. But in general, it's my opinion, she's a loving mom. She would never do this. That sounds like the judge is going to let it in because it becomes relevant when you don't have a body on a murder case. She wouldn't just, she's not in Bora Bora, or she didn't commit suicide and do something shit. There's no tendency to hurt herself or to run off without her children. So that's why it sounds like the judge is going to let some of it in. At some point, it's going to become cumulative or prejudicial, and then she's going to expect counsel to object at that time.
Yeah, and John, I'm assuming that she's got to find the right balance, because if it weighs too much against Brian Walsh's favor, that is something that could be potentially brought up on an appeal, right?
Yeah, the judge has got to be very concerned about that. And the judge really has got the hardest job here. It's a multi-week trial with a lot of evidentiary objections, and she wants to make sure this verdict, when it comes down, that it stands on appeal. But one other point about this issue about whether she's a loving mother and a good employee, the challenge for the Walshe legal team is, so great evidence is coming in about her as this unbelievable mom, as this unbelievable employee, and then in front of the jury, they have to object. No, don't let that evidence in that she's a great mom. So that's why they wanted to bring it up today, do it outside the presence of the jury, because then Brian Walshe looks really awful. You know, he's trying to say I'm innocent, but don't say good things about my wife in front of the jury. I mean, that is a terrible place for them to be. And so this evidence is going to be hard for them to object in front of the jury, because then they look like this. Are you kidding me? He's objecting to evidence about his wife. So it's a tough road for the defense lawyers, tough road for the judge. Prosecutors want to get as much of this evidence in as they can.
And that's why John gets paid the big bucks. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, it would look horrible in front of a jury when you know, the judge is talking about how the defense wants no good words about the woman he's married to and the mother of his children to be spoken publicly in court. Peter, another thing that the defense doesn't want out there, and we'll get to the Google searches, but this guy was also surfing quite a bit of porn, a lot of porn history. The prosecution basically says, look, this goes to his state of mind at the time. I don't know if that the marriage was falling apart, that he had a wandering eye. It said that he was having an affair, she was having an affair. You know, it gets a bit scandalous, but how much of that can the judge let in terms of pornographic searches? I mean, the government's going to want to bring as much as they can in, correct?
Yeah, but it's a little confusing here, because I think the defense also wants to bring in, I think there's some that he was like searching things about, you know, how to get rid of your wife or something like that. And I forget the specific stuff, but she was saying, no, those were like pornographic things about, no, I think, scratch that. Strike that from the record. It was something about a cheating wife. You know, he wanted to look up something about a cheating wife, and that's one of the allegations that the prosecution's bringing up, that he killed her because she already had a boyfriend. She was going to be taking the kids, and she had this great job, and she was the one who was making money, and she'd take him to Washington, and he didn't want that to happen. And so defense is saying, you know, when you say that he was looking at things like cheating wife, this was pornography. It wasn't like he was looking to, you know, he was concerned about his wife. It was just, you know, something about, and I think his defense counsel was saying, not only did it say cheating wife, but cheating wife with a threesome and who got impregnated and all that. And she said, this was just pornography. Everybody's looking at pornography now. She actually said he's a male. He looks at pornography. And I will tell you, anecdotally, ever since some of us were old enough to kind of doing some of this before the advent of the internet, I've become convinced that massive numbers of people are looking at pornography. It's almost become very different. In the old days, you'd actually have to assertively, you know, get in your car and go to some, what we used to call a dirty bookstore, where you get something mailed to you in a plain brown wrapper at home. But it's so easily accessible. You're sitting there home in the privacy of your room. And in talking to prosecutors, particularly the ones who prosecute illegal pornography, they just say it's just opened up the floodgates. And so they just think even, you know, the 13 and 14-year-old kids are looking at it. So I think that was sort of the point that defense counsel was also making here. If you look at any kind of inflammatory thing about a cheating wife and some related things that he had been Googling, she just said he was just looking at pornography. Hey, he's a male. That's not, just because you look at pornography doesn't mean you're going to kill your wife. You know, that's a totally different thing. And so interesting that even though to the average juror, it may kind of put him in a bad light. We don't like to think any happily married man is looking at pornography. Defense may, out of necessity, actually want to bring that up and use that.
My question is it only men? That's my question. Denisha here. Thank you. I love the STS Nation community, and my glasses are fuzzy, so it almost looks like commentary, but I'll take both. This could be quite salacious. Nico, if I can find the comment, I'm going to get back to it. But the question from Intuitive Karen, or the comment from her just now, I mean, you heard Peter just saying all men are looking at pornography. Well, all kids are looking at their phones all day long. And apparently the judge is going to be asking potential jurors, or seated jurors, I should say, not to be looking at the internet or news once the trial starts. And she was asking, does that eliminate everybody under the age of 60, I guess? What do you do in this new age? I mean, it's ubiquitous. So what do you do if you're, if that comes up, the judge basically gives you those instructions, and you're a 35-year-old who's on Instagram half the day.
Yeah, but the instruction is not going to be not to look at any news about this or any internet searches on this topic. You don't just cease to exist. You have to be very careful. What we had the judge do on our high-profile case here is give that strong instruction every night before they leave. Okay, and you're on the honor system. Jurors do it. I mean, that's just a reality. We all know it. Jurors do it, and they get input from other people in their house. And we had a juror. She was an alternate, thankfully. We had a juror. Her husband was coming to court every day and watching our arguments outside the jury's presence. Now, I hope he wasn't saying anything to her. She was an alternate, and we didn't need her at the end. But I mean, she was with us anyway. But still, I mean, that's a factor. We don't think of things like that. So someone in your home is watching a high-profile case. So jury selection is going to be a big deal. Some people like using, questions, and they have forms that they give out to the juries ahead of time to talk about high-profile cases. I like to use scaled questions, but everybody has their style of doing it. And then the fact you really have to harp on a person's right not to testify, because if you're a loving husband and you're being accused of murdering your wife, a juror is going to be thinking that. Why wouldn't this person testify? It's not me. I'm mourning my wife's missing also. We have 3 kids that need their mama. I want the jury to hear me say that. I mean, prosecutors can't argue that, but jurors are going to be thinking that. And as a defense attorney, that's one thing that I would bring up in voir dire, or I think you guys say voir dire up there, right? So, you have to talk about it, because if you don't get inside the head of your audience, you're going to lose.
Yeah. All great points. This is now Brian Walshe's mother walking into court today. And while we watch this, it's muted, I think. John, back to you. The judge now is apparently reviewing whether alleged evidence of an affair by Brian, as well as a private investigator who was reportedly hired by Brian's mother, who was, I guess, trailing Anna in her last days, whether or not that will be admissible. What do you do with that kind of evidence? I mean, the defense is distancing this whole private eye talk, saying, well, it had nothing to do with Brian. It was this overly, I guess, protective, caring mother who was doing it and funding it, and apparently she has some money. What is a judge? You just said, I think it was you who said the judge is going to have, or maybe it was Nico, said the judge is going to have the hardest job in this trial. But what do you do with evidence like that?
Well, the judge would have to connect it to the defendant. In other words, did he talk to his mother? Is there some email or text to her where they communicated about this private eye, looking to see what his wife was doing? If they can connect the mother to the defendant, to Brian Walshe, then I think the evidence comes in. If it's just the mother kind of being a busybody on her own doing this, looking into whether she was having an affair, it probably doesn't come in. But if they can connect it to Brian Walshe, to the defendant in this case, I think some of that evidence will come in, because it goes to his motive. He, it's not he killed her because she was having an affair. I mean, obviously shouldn't kill anybody, shouldn't kill them because they're having an affair, but that may be the reason that I think the motive that the prosecution said that he did this. I think there's a financial benefit to him as well, but the motive is she's having an affair, so I'm going to kill her and mutilate her body, and mom's going to give me the information about her having the affair. So if that's the case, I think the evidence comes in.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add on to that, Peter, the prosecution basically, I think, argued in motions filed that all of this, the PI, fits into this pattern of sort of paranoia on the part of Brian Walshe. We're going to get into his competency. He had to basically be tested by psychologists and was proven to be competent to stand trial. But they argue that it fits in this pattern of paranoia, the whole issue of marital tension, and potentially even motive. So isn't that really important that the government does get this in as evidence?
Actually, and I don't know the answer to this, what it came out today is that the government has not put her on the witness list at this point. So, and a lot of people thought they would definitely want to do that. But as John just said,
she's on the defense list, correct?
Yeah, and the defense said that they don't know that they're going to call her, but they just to err on the side of caution, they'd put her on the witness list too. And if you remember, even the Karen Reed case, I think they put whatever, like 150 people on the witness list, and they called way less than half. And it's just like, hey, you can't just say later on, oh, I want to call that person, but I didn't never put them on the witness list. So you kind of do. You kind of throw anybody and everybody, and that doesn't mean they're going to testify. At the moment, though, they have not tied her into him at all. The defense was saying that when she did contact some private investigation firm, she said, now don't tell my son about this. And that's what the person testified to. So that would say that, okay, so it's not, and there's something about her saying she was encouraged to do this by a psychic. And so it's kind of her own thing, unless they can show otherwise. And right now they haven't showed it. Otherwise, if they can connect it, that that would really support the prosecution's argument that he thinks his wife is seen, or he believes his wife is cheating on him and going to leave him, and therefore that's one of the reasons why he killed her. But at the moment, they haven't, connected A to B and shown that he had any knowledge of what his mother was doing.
Yeah, which is exactly what the defense is saying. Court lurker here is saying it's redonkulous. The state isn't calling the mom. Yeah, I get it. She won't talk, but put some pressure on that mom. I mean, John, do you agree with that? That she needs to have pressure asserted on her? Also, what's the issue with her? If she's on the defense list, I assume she can't be in court until she testifies, correct?
Right. And I would think they'd want to have mom there kind of sitting on the defense side. At least there's some family standing behind him. Her testimony must be awfully important to the defense if they're going to leave her on a list, because you'd like to have some family members, particularly in a situation like this, where he's alleged to have killed his wife brutally and destroyed her body. So it's surprising if they had doubts about it, whether they would leave her on a list. They must have other evidence, though, that he thought she was having an affair. It's not dependent on this hook to his mother. And so I'm sure they're going to lead with that in their opening statement, that, he thought, she was having an affair. And in fact, I think the prosecution is calling the person that is alleged to have taken place with. So they're going to be out in the open about this. I mean, it's not something that the prosecution has to run from. They want to put it out there. It's a horrible reason to want to kill anybody. There's no good reason. And so this is going to make him look, even worse. This was how he dealt with this.
Nico, to you, I mean, one of the things that's being talked about kind of on the exosphere are these kisses that the mom was blowing her son. I was there for the first week of the Diddy trial, and Diddy's mom was sort of doing the same thing. Is this going to be tamped down by the judge once the trial gets going, kind of these shows of emotion and affection?
I don't know if the judge is going to do that. If I was the state, I'd want her to do that, because I think it makes him look like a wussy and a mama's boy. And I would think that
I'm in trouble, man.
I would think, well, I'm just being honest. In the middle, no one's blowing kisses. I mean, nobody blew kisses. I mean, you just don't do that. You're there to support. I love you. You can mouth out, I love you. I mean, but just keep him blowing kisses. I don't know. I mean, one time, got it. But I mean, on a repetitive basis, look, she I'm surprised she wasn't indicted as an accomplice. If they really think that she was involved, maybe somehow, I would call her if I was the state. If I was the government, I'd call her, let her invoke her right. I mean, because it would just look horrible for the mother-in-law to say, look, my daughter-in-law is missing. We miss her. The kids need her. My son needs her. And, that's the statement. But if she can't say that under oath, I mean, it's aggravated perjury here in Texas. I don't know what it'd be up there. But look, I mean, I think there's a strategy to doing it. But if she's on the witness list and they invoke the rule, she can't be in the courtroom. So you're gonna lose the whole family member behind them. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You either admit that she's not on the list, and the government might say, well, we may call her, so invoke the rule just to get her out of there. That's part of that strategy where you're just messing with somebody to hopefully throw their game off. But I mean, I don't know those prosecutors and the way they try cases.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about the kids, and here's the answer. There were 2, 4, and 6 at the time of her disappearance. They are forever major victims in this, and will be. Well,
look, they lost. If he gets convicted, they lost both parents.
Yep.
I mean, and then with mom's gonna, she's gonna raise them. I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what. So it's terrible. I mean, these kids will never be the same. It doesn't mean they can't get their life back on track, but really pray for them.
No, it's awful. It's awful, and that's always the ripple effect of the victims here of these crimes. Rosemary, a lot of people are saying this, that the mother knows exactly what her son did. Maybe she doesn't want to believe it, but I think there's something to that. Peter, it's been a long time since we covered this at the very beginning, at the onset, while she was still missing. And I think at the time, Brian Walshe may have even already been in prison or was serving a sentence for something totally unrelated, which was forged artwork, which kind of speaks to his character. But is any of that going to be allowed to come in, or is that a big no just because it is so prejudicial? Or you have to tie the facts of that case into this case somehow if you're the government?
I know the prosecution would like it to come in. It would be very helpful to them that he actually, an unrelated case not in Norfolk Superior Court, in federal court, there was this art fraud that he was selling, fraudulent paintings. And he, in all likelihood, they were kind of working out the sentencing, and it looked like he was going to be incarcerated in federal penitentiary. I don't know if we were talking about a long sentence or like 3 years or something like that, but it was looking that way. And so that was the prosecution. I know early on was trying to say, oh, that's part of the motivation. He goes to prison. She's got a great job in Washington. She takes the kids. She's got cheating on him. She's got the allegations. He's got a boyfriend there, and that would be his motivation to kill her. So I know they would like to bring that in, that he was facing. Normally, I think in most cases you can't bring that in, that the jury's got to be locked like a laser. Did he do this crime? And if you kind of throw in bad reputation, he did some bad con job with the art or something, that would have no relevancy on whether he did this murder or not. But it would kind of muddy him up and make him look bad. And so normally you would want to leave that out.
Yeah. Well, Lily Rose here just refreshing us a little bit. He was on a federal ankle monitor, John, for having sold fake paintings when he committed the crime. Obviously a totally different crime, but when are you allowed in court to link a previous bad act to a current bad act if it, I guess, shows something about his character?
Yeah, you can't bring it in to show his character. He's just this terrible person. He's a con artist. He's had these federal fraud charges, but you can bring it in to show kind of his motive or his intent here. Was it because he had financial troubles? He wanted to look good in the court case, if his wife was in the fraud case, to look good to the judge there, that he had to take care of his kids because the wife wasn't around. I think the prosecutors want to bring it in a little bit on the motive. I think this judge is going to let in some of this evidence from this federal case. And of course, if he does take the stand, then it's fair game to talk to him about prior convictions. But I think they're going to let some of it in to go to his motivations, kind of his intent here. Not much. The judge doesn't want a mistrial. She doesn't want to get it reversed on appeal. But I think the prosecutors are going to be to connect this art fraud situation to some of his motivation in this case. So a little bit of it's going to come in. I think the big motivation is going to be that he thought she was committing adultery, and this was his answer to that. But this is part of the picture of the art thing. I think it'll be a small part of the case.
Nico, kind of a personal question, but Flora Paris here. To me, the motive in these cases is always because I felt entitled to be able to do it. You talked about these young kids. We're talking 2, 4, and 6 at the time of the crime in 2023, so still very, very young. As a former district attorney, do you take these kinds of cases maybe more personally because you're also working on behalf of the children here? And as you said, now they're going to potentially lose a father, have already lost a mother, but these kids are caught in the proverbial crossfire.
I mean, when I was DA, I took every case serious, especially cases when there's an allegation of a murder. As you probably know, we shared with you on the show before previously, my brother was murdered in my driveway, and which is odd. Why I defend cases. I believe in the justice system. I truly believe in what it represents. A system by the people, of the people, for the people, that the government in all of its abuses can get out of line, even when I was DA. And we have a system that we go to the people for redress. And so, yeah, they should take it serious, but they should take it serious because a human being was allegedly taken from this earth. And so, yes, there's a ripple effect of that, as you mentioned, Joel. I mean, the kids and moving forward and siblings and parents and cousins and friends and all the things that she would have affected while she was on earth. But so I hope he takes it serious, but of course for the children, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't act. I mean, if your question was, what do you do? Because now you're taking away their daddy. A prosecutor doesn't think that way. A prosecutor prosecutes crimes and allegations, not people. And so I follow the facts, and that leads you to a person. And that's what you're going to have to do in a case like this. You don't prosecute a person because then it becomes political and too personal. You prosecute allegations, and the evidence leads you to a person. And that's when I think you can keep pure prosecution.
That is very well said. Speaking more like a law professor there. Here's another clip from today's hearing. Let's just take a look, and then we'll get John and Peter and Nico's take on the back end.
We gave a list to the court of the things that we didn't object to, so we're going to start working on this.
So curiously, and I just want to make sure that this was a conscious decision on the defense's part and not something that was unconscious. There's some of what she said that you kept in. You know that. Well, attorney.
No, I
There are some statements that you did not ask to be, and so.
From Tracy Minor, Judge?
Yes.
Well, then that was an error. That's the highlight, didn't carry through.
Okay, all right.
Because, and I don't want to interrupt the Commonwealth on this. And we're going to file a written response. Let me just lay the groundwork for it, though.
Sure.
The court brought up the humane practice. We footnoted in a pleading. We never asserted humane practice. We're not asking for humane practice. Okay,
all right.
That is the bottom line here, and the Commonwealth's citation to sheriff in their latest briefing, they misstate what the law is. The law is if humane practice is a live issue, the court is required by law to give it humane practice. It's not a live issue. We've never raised it, so I want to set that groundwork.
All right, I appreciate that.
2, I understand what the court just said about. You never intended to indicate you were going to exclude the presence of Tracy Minor. Our prejudice, contrary to what the Commonwealth argued in their brief, in their memo they filed last night, we made it very clear what the prejudice is. The prejudice is from the fact that Tracy Minor is there and all these statements are being made. Not the statements necessarily of Tracy Minor, but the statements of the client. And we made clear what we think the prejudice is. And that prejudice, once again, we'll lay it out in more detail, but that prejudice is the same type of prejudice that flows from the Commonwealth's reaction to Proctor. And I won't go into anything about Proctor except for the fact that once Proctor's integrity was impeached, the Commonwealth moved away from it because his impeached integrity reflected on this office, the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. Our prejudice is that what happened at these interviews, that Tracy Minor was there, that the jury can take that to say, as we said, either he's lying to his attorney, therefore he's lying to us, and they can't believe our representations during the trial, or his attorney was complicit in the misrepresentations he was making to the police because she chimed in, but she was there. And so now we're making misrepresentation on his behalf. That's the type of prejudice we're trying to avoid. And finally, we're going to be arguing, why is it relevant, especially when you take the humane practice out of it? There is no relevance to Tracy Minor being there. So we'll brief it, but I wanted to lay the groundwork for that.
All right. So I appreciate that preview. And I appreciate the reminder with regard to the humane practices, both for myself and also to the Commonwealth.
Well, you can see right there, this guy Tipton is on the ball. Peter, to you, everyone's asking humane practices. What translate what we just watched for us? Tracy Minor here, thanks to Patriotic, Walsh's white-collar criminal defense attorney from his previous art fraud case. What did we just watch? What was going on there?
You know something? I almost want somebody else to answer that first because I was having a little trouble following it. He did have Tracy Minor has an extraordinarily good reputation, but the kind of the word about her is that this was not her kind of case. She does other kinds of cases and has a wonderful reputation, but this was not sort of her forte, doing a murder case. And so so I guess there's some complaints about her, but I was listening. I wasn't able to attend, or listen to the hearing today, and so I couldn't quite find what the particular complaint they were talking about. Maybe one of our other panelists,
John, you want to jump in? I mean, first of all, John, is humane practice, is that a legal term right there? And what do you make of that exchange?
It must be a Massachusetts thing. I haven't heard that in a courtroom before. I was thinking, are we dealing with, a situation? I just didn't know what they were talking about. I know one thing they were talking about there. One of the detectives in this case was also in the Karen Reed case. And I think the defense is going to want to make a big deal about that. They're going to want to say, well, there's corruption in the Karen Reed case, there's corruption in our case, the same folks. They're going to try to run with that because they've got real challenges with the evidence here. So I do know that was part of the argument dealing with one of the detectives that was from the Karen Reed case. They want to say there's something rotten in the state of Denmark, and it permeates our cases, this case as well. I think that was part of it, but I wasn't familiar with what that other term was.
Well, let's dive into that, because this is like the elephant in the room, which is Michael Proctor. He is connected to the Walshe case, and obviously is infamous from the Karen Reed trial. He was a lead investigator in the Karen Reed case, and as you heard, his integrity was basically impeached with horrible text messages. Peter, how is Proctor going to impact this trial? Do you think he's going to be called? I think right now the government said they don't plan to call him, and the defense doesn't plan to call him. As far as
no, they don't even in the Karen Reed trial.
Right.
You ever heard of the lead investigator of a murder who isn't called to testify, and they didn't want to bring him in the second on the second trial at all. And I think if they can tie him in, really the process, he would just. I almost don't know where to begin. His reputation is so bad in Massachusetts on a variety of levels, not just misconduct, but also and bias and prejudice and sharing police information with his buddies and making all those sexist remarks and all that, but also that he just didn't do a good job of investigating the case. That he shows that there's a Karen Reed, very briefly. There's a body found in front of a house where there was supposed to be a party the night before. He shows up and he says, well, that's a police officer's house, so I'm not even going into the house. I'm not interviewing anybody who was there the night before. I'm not even looking inside the house. And that's an example of just in such incompetent work. So something like 19 different cases now that are pending or were pending had Proctor in it, and everybody wanted to, investigate Proctor and see if he was doing the same thing for their case too. And that's why certainly they wanted the defense counsel here in this Brian Walshe case really wanted to see whatever evidence they can get and whatever paperwork they can get, and to see if there was either any kind of prejudice here or incompetent work. And so the defense here would love to say, we have Proctor on this case, and again, he probably botched it, and he's biased and prejudiced, and he messed it up. And so they would love to tie his name in. So far, at this moment, I don't think they found anything that Proctor did on this case that was wrong. That hasn't been revealed yet, but I think that they're hoping during the trial something like that will come out. So the defense would like to say Proctor, and probably the prosecution wants nothing to do with Proctor at all, because he's just he would really just paint any case he's connected with in such a horrible light of the investigation and the way the investigation went.
Yeah, I want to dig down a little deeper. A couple more things we have to get to, then we'll get final thoughts. Patriotic here, letting us know, I would say best guest, better community. Everyone at STS Nation is on top of it. By the way, let us know if you want us to cover this trial. Gavel to gavel, let us know. Massachusetts humane practice requires that when a defense's confession or admission, or defendant's confession or admission is offered in evidence, a judge must initially decide at a preliminary hearing without the jury whether the Commonwealth proved the statement was voluntary. John, how do you deconstruct that even further?
Yeah, so that deals with, when somebody was, I guess, not Mirandized and just they were they're talking to law enforcement there, or talking to folks in a room, or to their lawyer and to law enforcement. Was it a voluntary statement? Did they say something that, that they were free to leave, but they spoke to law enforcement, spoke to folks? Obviously the defense wants to bring all these issues up outside the presence of the jury. They don't want the jury around when they make these objections, because then it looks like they're trying to hide the ball, and they think they're kind of tipping off to the jury, yeah, he did incriminate himself. So they're trying to keep all of his statements out, anything he said, so they'll come at it from very different angles. They'll say they'll say, well, he was Mirandized, but it was done improperly, or they'll say maybe in this situation that it was done in a way that he should have been Mirandized, that it wasn't a voluntary statement. So he must have said something that's not good for their case. So they want to keep it out, and it's probably ground zero for them, because admissions by defendants, are very problematic. It's hard to kind of explain them away.
Ladybug giving us a little more context here. I think it's something about Tracy Minor, that previous defense attorney, making an agreement with the DA for limited phone extraction that the Massachusetts State Police didn't follow. Patriotic also asking, let's cover this trial. We do get the best panels. We've got the best guests in true crime. That is not a tagline. It is our reality. So Nico, back to you. This guy, Michael Proctor, is a bad apple. The lead investigator on the Karen Reed trial lost his job as a result of some of the text messages and other nefarious things that he did. There's debate about whether it impeded the investigation in any way. But the bottom, the bottom line here is that the defense wants to use this, because if he lied, joked, or showed bias in one high-profile case, their argument is, hey, why not in this case as well? And they've specifically pushed for access to the quote-unquote Proctor files, his text, his cloud data, his grand jury testimony, all this stuff. I mean, isn't that a criminal defense attorney's dream, to have a bad cop who you can point the finger at?
Well, maybe more than a dream, maybe it's Hail Mary. I mean, you never know. This is more and more that I've looked into this and listened to everyone talk. This sounds like a reasonable doubt case to me. They're not trying to prove that Walsh is innocent. They're just trying to acquit him, have the jury find him not guilty. That's a different standard. Mm-hmm. They're not saying he's innocent. He didn't kill they didn't prove it. There's a difference between you didn't do it versus they didn't prove it. And so from a defense standpoint, from more I'm hearing and seeing this, it's they didn't prove it. And so, yes, if you have a Proctor issue, we'll call it a Proctor issue, mm-hmm. Then I, as a defense attorney, that may be what you have to work with. Now, if I'm prosecuting this case, I'm embracing it. I'm saying we're not going to call Proctor, because there's things he did that are not acceptable. But Detective Joe Blow adopted his investigation and took it over, and you're going to hear evidence. I mean, I embrace bad facts and opening statements. I did it when I was DA. I do it when I was a defense attorney. You have to embrace those bad facts, because you want credibility with a jury. If you lose credibility with a jury, then they're not going to believe anything you say. And even though I'm not trying to be liked by a jury, but I do want to be credible to a jury, and I want to ultimately be trusted by a jury, whether they like me or not. And so that's something that I do and we do. So this is a reasonable doubt case to me. This guy is not going to be found innocent. I'm not saying he won't be acquitted, but it's not an innocence issue, in my humble opinion.
Peter, do you think we see either Proctor or Brian Walshe take the stand in this case?
No, I just don't. First of all, a lot of people don't realize in trials, it's very rare that the defendant takes a stand. I mean, you always see the movies and everything. They always take the stand and all that. But I know I talked to one of my favorite veteran lawyers, who's one of the great criminal defense attorneys in Massachusetts, who'd been doing it for 55 years. He told me he could count probably on a single hand, like 5 times that he actually had somebody testify, because on cross-examination, he said almost inevitably they mess it up. So I don't know that they would. I don't think they'd have anything really much to gain by putting him on the stand. As far as Proctor goes, I don't see the prosecution. He can only make their case look bad. I think defense would like to have Proctor take the stand if they can, but particularly they'd have to find something wrong that he did. It's just not like, oh, so you have a bad reputation, right? They'd really have to have found through the evidence, through the extractions of a cell phone or text or whatever, that he really did do something either unethical or botch the investigation, or you didn't even look at other people, like the Karen Reed case, and you just figured, kind of focused on one person from the word go. And so I think that if there's any way the defense could bring him in, they would do that, but they really would have to have found something out beforehand that he did on this particular case. And so far we haven't heard it.
Yeah, Matt B with the 5 memberships, and then Matt B saying the jury's. Matt's also the one who said the jury will come to a verdict within 20 minutes. Is going to hate this guy just like they hated Charlie and Donna, of course, referring to the Adelson family. He's going to take the stand. I don't know. This guy does. That's Barry says he's going to take the stand. He strikes me as being arrogant enough to want to do that. I mean, John, to that point, do you ever fight with your clients to say, no, this is a really bad idea, but they're maybe lawyers and they think they know better and they say, no, let me take the stand, or non-lawyers. But do you ever get into those battles with your clients?
Well, ultimately, it's the defendant's decision whether he or she wants to take the stand. That a lawyer can give advice, but they've got to make that decision. I mean, I do think the challenge for the defense, and they've got to come up with some answer for this. And oftentimes you'll try to do it with other witnesses. Maybe it's his mother, maybe not her in this case, but somebody. I mean, why'd you lie to the cops? When this first happened, they've got to provide an answer to the jury on that. And now he could obviously provide that answer. Brian Walshe, if he was telling the truth, what that reason is, he may not be able to testify about that, but they've got to address that one way or another, because whether he testifies or not, if they think he lied to law enforcement from the jump, then they're just not going to believe a thing he says, regardless of what he says. And so that's the challenge for the defense here. They're not going to put him on the stand. Who can they put on the stand to kind of have an answer for that? Why he did lie to law enforcement, because that's very problematic for him.
Nico, another big issue in the case, competency. He was at one point, this is Brian Walshe, there was a stabbing attack in jail. There was alleged cognitive decline by his defense team, emotional instability. He had to go and be evaluated, and they said, nope, this guy is good to stand trial. I am the son of a psychiatrist. I have no idea how they decide these things in terms of competency. Maybe you can elaborate on how they figure out if someone is competent to stand trial. I mean, this guy appears to have it together right now, yeah. But how do you really know?
So competency and insanity are two different things. Insanity addresses the mens rea, the mental intent at the time of the allegation is committed. Competency is that at the time of trial, can you appreciate the circumstances and the proceedings, and can you effectively communicate with your lawyer? That's competency. So if you're found incompetent, you can regain competency through medication, through treatment, and then you can stand trial. If you're found insane, you can never gain sanity back at the time of the allegation. So if you're found not guilty by reason of insanity, you're not, that's it. They can't prove that mens rea. It doesn't mean you go off scot-free. You go to a mental institution until you can be released, but usually it doesn't happen for a long, long time, if at all. So yeah, I don't know about, I don't know about his competency or why he wasn't competent, why he couldn't communicate. I'll tell you what he does need to fix outside the jury's presence. He needs to take that stupid ass smile off his face when he's talking to his lawyer. You do that in front of the jury on a murder case against your wife is the deceased or the missing witness, a jury, and they watching. I tell clients,
Nico. I mean, do you tell your clients right now? I mean, do you say if you're defending a murder one, you say do not smile in that courtroom, correct?
I did. I mean, we just finished a 4-week murder trial. And so, yes, I said, when you walk in and out of the courthouse, don't be on your phone laughing. Ha, ha, ha. I mean, because you might have a juror right around the corner. We were walking out of the hall and there was a juror sitting right there. And thank God we follow our own advice. And we were just very stoic, and we walked out and we talked when we got to the parking lot. And even then, jurors might be leaving the courthouse. So you have to be very cognizant. Jurors are watching everything. There could be a witness on the stand, and they're watching you and your client on how you're responding to that evidence. And so if you're on your phone, if you're doing this, and we talk to our juries in Vordaer, and we tell them, if you see us texting, we're talking to each other. In the old days, you pass notes. We may be looking something up. We may be talking to each other. So we really try to prepare a jury for the way we communicate, how we communicate, and then we talk to our client about that you're being watched all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
look at this schmuck. He looks like an asshole. I mean, look at that. I mean, get that out of your system, guy.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's the same way that, I don't know, that someone has a very endearing face. He's the exact opposite. It's just funny to hear Nico so blunt about it. I agree. No, not at all. No,
Is
I
it a
just
PG
don't.
show? It might
No,
be.
no. You're good, man. You're good. So the final thing here, and then we'll get final thoughts. Google searches. So just John, within days of the disappearance, detectives are obviously processing things. They find blood in the basement, this damaged, bloody knife. Those are obviously going to be pretty problematic for him. But then you've got Google searches, including how long before a body starts to smell, best ways to dispose of a body, can you be charged with murder without a body? Now, John, if I hear these 3 Google searches,
That's bad.
I am convicting. I firmly believe that. If I'm assuming everything else sort of falls into place, how do you get around this if this comes into evidence in the trial?
Well, it's coming into evidence, and it's powerful evidence. I mean, it is probably game over. I mean, who does that? And who does that when their wife is missing? So it's incredibly powerful evidence. Judges letting that in. I mean, they're going to have folks who have searched his phone, and they're going to have it, and it'll be a long witness who talks about how they did it and what time he did it, and how many searches he did and what came up under his searches and how many minutes or seconds he was on that page when he looked at how to dispose of a body. I mean, they'll go into the details of that, and that'll be powerful evidence. That'll be somebody in law enforcement who's gone through his phone, who's a phone expert, who's testified in 50 other cases and gone to incredible training for all this. So the jury is going to know to a T that's exactly what he did.
Yeah. Nico LaHood, former district attorney, Bexar County, Texas. Don't mess with Texas. Now he is one of the better criminal defense attorneys you just heard. You got what, an acquittal for your clients? Is that?
But we had the 3 officers, first time ever for officers to be charged with murder in an officer duty-related shooting. They were responding to an officer in trouble, and a lady came at them with a hammer. And so they were all 3 charged with murder, and we tried it together under a joint defense trial, and we got an acquittal on all of them, thank God.
Good work. He just proved my point. One of the better criminal defense attorneys out there. I guess with a case like this, if you're defending it, what's going to be the biggest challenge outside of these Google searches and that smug face?
I mean, that's it. I mean, unless you have evidence that his mom was looking that up. I mean, I guess there could be some there. I mean, I always try to pause and wait to get the evidence, because in this case, people thought that we were dead in the water too, because of what the narrative was wrong out there by the media. So I don't know what the truth is. I have not seen all the evidence, but that is, to John's point, that is horrible evidence against him and I would want to know when he made those searches versus when she was missing. They're gonna be tying all this together, during the trial.
Nico, you get any threats on a case like that? I mean, people have very, very passionate beliefs about law enforcement on either good or bad, and if you're defending them, is that a dangerous job?
I mean, well, I got more threats when I was DA, but it happens. But we didn't get one, thankfully, on this one. The narrative had changed, during the trial, and because it was televised, people got to see it. They didn't have to just hear about it. It was live streamed, and so people were watching it. So I think as the evidence went on, and they saw, we had a horrible detective, by the way. It was embarrassing for the government. And so I think, thankfully, we didn't get any threats. I'm not saying people didn't think it, but no, we didn't get any threats on this one.
Yeah, Ned Smith is in your neck of the woods. I bet her family files a civil suit. We will see, I guess. That is Nico LaHood. John Fishwick, former U.S. attorney for the Western District of Virginia. That's a big job, appointed by President Obama, and now a criminal defense attorney. I mean, John, I always ask the same question, but how are these criminal defendants so dumb? Forget about being smug, but I mean, presumably, if you are convicted of this crime, why are you searching the best way to dispose of a body? Why do we see this over and over and over? And your final thoughts about this case specifically?
Yeah, it's amazing what folks will do. They must know that people are going to be able to figure this out. I mean, we all talk about these cases where people can, search people's phones is kind of basic phone 101, that you're going to find that information out. But I guess so panicked and so concerned about what he's done and what he was going to do next, he just takes that risk. I think this is a strong case. That's what I said at the start of the show. It's a very strong case. I think the jury is going to have their arms folded after about the opening statements in this case. That's usually when many cases are the jury makes their mind up. I think they're going to make their mind up early here. The case is not going to go as long as everybody thinks. Nobody wants to be deliberating over the holidays. No, the prosecution is not going to waste too much time because they don't want to keep jurors there in Massachusetts in December on a case. So this case is going to be over sooner than people think. I think it's going to be a guilty verdict.
Yeah, by the way, someone said, hey, go up to Boston. I'm like, I'm not going to Boston in December. You crazy? I went to college up in Waltham, and I know how cold it is, and that's why I live in Miami Beach right now. But I've made an executive decision. We are, as long as this trial is being live streamed, which I believe it is via Zoom, and we're able to broadcast it per the judge, we will cover it. It'll be our last hurrah before the first of the year. And then there are a flurry of big trials that we've been waiting on, including Courtney Clenny, including Corey Richins, just blanked on her name, and about 5 others that we've been following closely. So last but not least, we got Peter Elican, a top Boston criminal defense attorney. You see him on Court TV. You see him on local TV in Boston. He pontificated about the Karen Reed trial, and now we've got Anna Walshe and Brian Walshe here. Peter, I guess, what are, I hate to phrase it this way, but by the way, please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't. We've got a Patreon page, but what are you, I guess, anticipating? I was going to say looking forward to, but that's not really the right phrase for a trial like this. What are you most anticipating in a trial like this with Brian Walshe and his one-time lovely wife, Anna Walshe, who is missing?
I think, the conventional wisdom here is that they have an extremely strong circumstantial case. And like I said at the beginning, circumstantial cases can be as strong practically as if you had the whole thing videotaped. They can be very strong. So they are going to just be hammering away on reasonable doubt. You don't have the body. And I'm not saying it's the strongest argument, but you don't have a body. Can you really prove she's dead? Because you got to do that. If somebody's murdered, they can't be still living. And, you don't have an eyewitness, you're just kind of building blocks. And if they can kind of chip away every single thing that comes up, they're going to try to come up with an excuse or an answer to. I don't know that it's going to save the day. But then again, I've been surprised. I think we all have. There's cases that we've looked at from the beginning and say, oh, they've got nailed dead to rights. And then all of a sudden you get surprised as the trial goes on. So I'm always open to the idea. So right now I think I'm thinking like everybody else, geez, it's a super strong case. I can't imagine them being acquitted, but we have been surprised many times before. And I wanted to jump on something that you just said earlier about people committing crimes are stupid. I have, on TV, I always see about these criminal masterminds and the criminal genius and the guy who's like the puppet master who's doing all the strings. And I've never seen anybody like that in my career. And we all talk about it. I talk to other criminal defense attorneys. Have you ever seen a criminal genius yet? And most of the people I represent either use very poor judgment or they have drug and alcohol problems. And you scratch their head. But that business about going online nowadays, geez, one thing, and I'll wrap this up in a second, but one thing that really struck me is that whenever I'm looking for anything online, if I'm looking, I was looking for a new office chair one day and I just kind of hit, and looked at a particular website. Within minutes, I'm getting flooded with every company in existence for office chairs, and when I go on Facebook, I get it just keeps popping up office chair. And so, but that just says to me, like, anything I'm doing looking at the internet, everybody's looking at me. Everybody knows what I'm doing. So I would be terrible. I don't know why certain people are still looking at illegal child pornography or trying to, you have people who are trying to hook up with, underage children or, 13-year-olds and for sex or something. Anybody online, you'd have to be crazy. Everybody's looking at you now. So, and yet people do it all the time. And I'm always scratching my head and saying, what were you thinking? And, but it's just, like I said, I'm waiting to see the criminal genius mastermind.
Yeah, I have a feeling that it was someone in Hollywood that came up with criminal mastermind, but the reality is that most of them make a lot of mistakes, and you've got great prosecutors, great investigators out there who usually catch the bad guys. Does some get away? They sure do. We're actually going to be back on this same story tomorrow night with a brand new panel, including Nima Rahmani, LA-based defense attorney. So tune in for that. And it was great to have John as a first-time best guest. Always get to see Nico LaHood and Peter Elican, and we'll obviously have him back as we cover this trial. Love you, America. Love you, San Antone, as they say. Love you, Virginia. Love you, Boston, Mass. And we will see you guys tomorrow night. Guys, stick around for one quick second.